Classical Indian dance has its origins to almost, I think, 3,000 years ago. And as Natya Shastra would document it, the Natya Shastra is an ancient text, not just on dance, on dramaturgy. So it has everything from stagecraft and character analysis to the emerging of emotion to everything. And dance is one aspect of that comprehensive text. And from that, it was, people presume that it must have been at least 3,000 years ago. Some people date it to 5th century AD, but it's contentious. So the roots and origins of this form of dance are very, very old. So this text in many ways provides the basis or root not just for Bharatanatyam, but also for all forms of Southeast Asian forms of classical dance. So including Odissi or Mohiniyattam or Manipuri, Thai or Indonesian. All these forms can in some way have, find some sort of link back to this comprehensive text. And we call it the Natya Veda or the 5th Veda because it's dated so far back that there are no characters of Rama or Krishna even mentioned in it. So it's a very old text. Since then, I think regionally there have been many changes and adaptations, and there's Bharatanatyam developed in one area, Odissi developed in another, Kuchipudi somewhere else. And so there have been changes over the course of these many thousands of years. And there have been adaptations to that particular region, and Bharatanatyam is one of the forms that has emerged. And this is in line with one school of thought, and which I believe in, actually. I think that this makes sense to me because there's some link between all the classical forms that's unexplained, and it's over so many different regions that it must have had some central reference point. Otherwise you cannot explain this strange similarity between all these forms of dance. The story goes that we were moving into the next yuga, or the time cycle, in which people's morals were falling, and there was more evil than good, and so they approached the gods to, the devas approached Brahma and said, tell us something that this knowledge can be dissipated in an easier way, rather than people learning to read and all that. So they said, let's give them something that can be seen and heard at the same time, that will dissipate the knowledge of the Vedas through dance and music and theatre. So then the Natya Veda was created, and Bharata taught it to his sons, and then the story goes on. So the idea is that the dance itself, or theatre or performing arts itself, not just performing art, but I think any form of art, culture. In India, it has a way of attributing it to the divine. So whether it's cooking or archery or even Kalaripayattu, in the beginning they'll go down to Mother Earth. So it's even the warriors, or anything you do, whether it's planting a tree, you'll pray to the tree before you plant it. So there's this sense of divinity that exists in everything. The artists of yore never signed their name on a sculpture. So there's so many works of art that are existing, as well as temples that are built, and you don't even know who the artist is, because there was no ego attached to what was created. So it just became an offering. So with dance and theatre, it was the same. So so obviously, when through the progression of time, this idea that dance and theatre itself was a tool to realize the self, somehow still continued to exist. So in that time, the Devadasi was the professional dancer, right? So Deva Dasi, meaning that she was someone who had dedicated her life to the Supreme Lord. So many people said they were married to God, or surrendered to God, or literally Dasi, meaning they tried to say servant of God. But it meant more than that. It meant that her entire life was dedicated to conveying these ideas of realizing the Supreme. So the structure of society, which came as a surprise to me also when I read about this, was so different that the Devadasi was married to God. So they would actually have a marriage ceremony, and where she would be married to God, which means that she lived and she practiced dance and all through her life. But in order that she could cultivate this profession, there was many things that were created to help her become the best dancer she could be. So because she was married to God, she didn't have any family that she owed anything to. But however, she was not a saint, she was not a realized soul. So she had a physical body, and her body had needs. So they had somebody who became her patron. So it was many times a king, and in those days, kings as well as men just had 2 wives, and it was fully normal for men to have more than 1 wife. And they would have the permission of their first wife, that she would have the permission of her parents as well as the priest and whoever, and they would have this patron. It was a very open, normal thing. And so she would be with this patron, but then the children that she got from him were her own, and she didn't owe anything to him in terms of the family or anything. So children were her own, and her children were taken care of by her community, by her brothers and her parents and all of that. So then what happened was, her children also were immersed in the arts, whether it was music or something else, and the tradition continued. But it allowed for dance to exist in its highest form. Obviously, which you can see from the temple sculptures, the dancers move in ways that we can't possibly even imagine. So the other thing that happened was that it was an open society, because they recognized the value of the art. They recognized it needed to exist in the best form. And now as a dancer, if I had to go home every day and take care of my husband and take care of my children and cook for my husband and do all these things, I would never be able to be the best dancer I am. But at that time, this was their way of taking care of it. And also what would happen is that she would be the one who would open the temple. She was the high priestess. She was respected in every forum. Even in kings, she ate with the king, she ate with the princesses. Anything auspicious or shubham was brought on by this dancer. But at that time, the kings, as well as the rulers, as well as these patrons who she was married to, recognized the value of this art and what it created in society. Art in general, in culture, influences the thought process of the public more than you can ever imagine from anything else. More than people giving speeches or any of that, art many times changes the thoughts and ideas of society. So that's what the purpose of art was. And the purpose of the art at that time was only to elevate the soul or elevate yourself to a higher spiritual level of thinking. So society in general understood that. So she was given this place. But as time went on, there were many invasions. There were Islamic invasions, and then subsequently there was English invasions and Dutch and French. There were all these Western invasions after that. So there was no patronage to the arts. And they also couldn't fathom that, a Western culture couldn't fathom that there's this independent woman, she's dancing, she doesn't have a husband, and she has a patron. So this was just not okay. And so they immediately thought prostitute. And on top of that, she dances. So how could it be anything other than her being a prostitute? They couldn't think that she has one patron. They didn't think that. They thought she's not married, and so she's free to everybody, and she dances. Because at that time also the Western idea of thinking was that dance is of the body, it's sullied. It didn't happen only in India, including in Africa, Ghana, everywhere. It was like dancing of the body, it's sullied, it's bad. So it's obviously something demeaning. But dance was never demeaning for us. Neither is the body, neither is the sensuality or the beauty of the body. So I think maybe there was, I have no idea, but I presume from everything that I've heard and read that at that time they went from this place of being high priestess and respected to this place of being a prostitute. And they were demure women, they were obviously loving of the art, and they were made to go to these, it became very dirty and mundane, and they had, because the dancers would not only dance in temples, everywhere they danced, that became sacred. Any place they danced, if they were to make a circle on the ground and dance there, that place was sacred. So wherever they danced was the temple. It's not that dance came from the temple. It's just that the temple supported it. So they were, if they danced in the temple, it was great. They could dance in the king's court, they could dance in somebody's house, and they could dance on the street as well. Wherever they danced, it became sacred. That's the idea, that dance comes from an idea of a spiritual or a sacred place. But they danced in king's courts, and the Western rulers, when they came in, the English rulers, they thought, oh, they're dancing for these kings, and we want to have the dancers dance for us too. And then they started hosting these parties called nautch parties, and N-E-U-T-C-H, nautch parties. And so they would invite these dancers, and then they would dance for them, and then the kings and the rulers would obviously get drunk, and they used them like prostitutes. And it became so bad that it was no more a situation. See, the reason why they had this independent thing was so that the art would flourish. Now there's no patronage for the arts. They've brought them down to just coming and dancing in the evenings. It's not a scenario which uplifts you, the soul, the mind, the intellect, nothing. And it's just a side entertainment. And then the level of dance also fell, and they became just prostitutes. And then again, the British brought in a law and they banned the dancers. So it's brought down, and then they banned it. They're like, now Devadasis are banned. Dancing is banned. So what do these women do? All they knew was dancing. And so when they banned it, it was really bad because then it was a tradition and culture that we were going to lose forever. Which is when all these other people stepped in, and including Rukmini Devi Arundel at that time, and they took out everything that was love related or Shringaram related. They made it very bhakti oriented, made it pretty linear, I presume, and revived it. So that's just the history of it.
Om Hai Hrim Shrim Shri Matre Shiva Priyaye Namo Namah. Om Hai Hrim Shrim Shri Matre.
I think in general with all our art, sensuality is not anything we shy away from. The Ashtapadis are more explicit than anything you'll ever find. The lovemaking of Radha and Krishna is so clear. It says, oh, your rounded breasts and the nail marks that were made on it, or the fact that you have nail marks on your body, or the red lac from her feet was on your chest, and I mean or that her breasts were heaving up and down. It's very clear. Or the cloth that slipped from her waist, and it's there's nothing that's left that's not said in the Ashtapadis. But then again, sensuality is embraced along with divinity. Sensuality is there, but vulgarity is not. It's important that you know where you're coming from. That's why I say that in some things, especially with classical dance, like with contemporary movies, you wouldn't think twice about showing something completely explicit. And it would be okay. No matter what, if you're playing the character, you can do what the character does. But in our classical dance, you don't. There's some things that you leave out. You leave some things out, but even in our, like, how do I say this? Like now if you see the temples, all our temples, these are places where we go to pray. The women outside on the walls have voluptuous breasts, they have a slender waist, they have these short skirts, their legs are showing, and they are beautiful. The thing is that beauty and divinity, divinity was reflected as physical beauty because that's how we understood it. It's not that Ravana was ugly to look at. Ravana was probably very handsome and maybe even more handsome than Rama. But whenever they show Ravana, they show him with 10 heads. They show him dark with these teeth and then a big mustache. He probably never looked like that. But the point is that, or whether he actually even existed, the thing is that because he was bad internally, they just show this external, what we consider as ugly. What we consider. That's also our limited mind thinking something is ugly. That's just how it is. So, it goes the same the other way. What we consider as divine, they show as what we consider as beautiful. So, beauty was never something to look away from, like it's too beautiful. You're like, it's so beautiful. And because it's so beautiful, and because it's so divine, it's so beautiful. Do you understand? The moment somebody became evil, they showed them as ugly people, like physically ugly. It's not that the good people were just beautiful, that's not what it was. So it was just a reflection of what we consider in our limited minds as beautiful and ugly. So the temple walls are completely splattered with this divinity everywhere, which is reflected in the beauty of the woman's body largely. And so many temples have explicit positions of men and women and women and women, And nothing is regarded as wrong. It's just a part of life. It is there. It is sexual. It is sensual. And yet, it's not vulgar. It's not vulgar because you're not selling it, you're not inviting it, you're not, you don't do this. It's more this, you use your hips and you're sensual. The Devi is beautiful. She's sensual, but she's not ugly and vulgar. The fact that there is Ganesha, or that there is a Devi, or that there is Krishna, or anything, is incidental, because those are just forms that we create in our mind to say this Supreme Consciousness exists in these so many forms, because we have a limited mind and we cannot imagine something so expansive that includes every creature, planet, human being, everything that moves and doesn't move is ultimately the same. But that's just a thought, and for you to actually realize it is something else. So if this Supreme Consciousness, or whatever you believe it to be, I believe that there is a Supreme Consciousness in some way or form. But we give it these limited forms that we are capable of understanding at this level. So if it is these forms, I think that's absolutely fine, because I can relate to it, I grew up with it, I understand it, and I can see the form, and I can play with it. I have a emotional relationship to it in many ways. So, but then again, the dance is not limited by that. I think that it's more about emotion, and any dance can elevate you. And I feel personally for me that with dance it's more about going inward. The reason why I choose to dance or love dancing is because I can be with myself at every moment in the present, which is something that we can never do. We're always planning for the future or thinking about the past, and then we forget to be here now. So, in terms of being a devotee or not, I don't think that actually matters or factors into it. Because I could as well do a dance about sunlight and how sunlight makes the world go round, or how the sun itself creates life, or how we breathe from the sunlight, as long as I feel passionately about sunlight. So, and you could very well parallel it to the Varnam that I did yesterday, where the flute of Krishna makes everything grow and sprout, and the birds fly and the leaves flower, and I could make it about sunlight, because it's anything that creates, that is life-giving, that is bigger than us. So it's too small to say I pray to Ganesha and Ganesha will come as a little cute elephant and kick away anything that's in the road for me. I mean, it's too small, it's too limited. So I think that in general, with Bharatnatyam, any classical Indian dance form, this idea of romance or love towards the Lord is of many ways. You can think of him as a husband, as a lover, as a child, or you can think of her, usually the woman, as a mother, as anything. I mean, these gods take on the shape that we want them to take on, that we can love them most. So they just change, like an amoeba, whatever we think or whatever. Now you want somebody to motivate you when you're going to war, you'll be Kali, or you say Jai Hanuman, or you want a child to play with, then is the baby Krishna or little Rama. You can, I mean, it creates whatever. So even in the Ashtapadis, when you are so sensual and so sexual and so explicit, you're not talking about a limited human being that you met yesterday at a bar and then you slept with him and something. It's not that. This is that love that is never quenched until you realize the Supreme. So when you make love to Lord Krishna, it's not this limited love that you see. It's just a physical representation of that yearning to realize the self, or actually just realize yourself, or understand that Krishna can never leave you. That's what the whole Gita Govindam is about, is where she searches and he searches and she searches. And finally it's like Radha can never possess him. It's only if she lets go of him that she will truly know him. Because the moment you're desirous to know, there's even a beautiful verse on Shiva and Parvati, Prakriti and Purusha, where it says that they are together and yet they're separate. The moment one desires the other, they become separate. But in reality, they're just one. It's just with us and the Supreme. The moment we want to know, we can't know. It's more us just understanding that it's within us, or it exists everywhere, or it's within you and within me. So it's that's what I mean by it's sensual, but yet it's divine, and it's not vulgar. There's nothing to feel shy about in expressing it, and it's just a part of us. It's a part of life. I think expression also is one, or sharing what I feel is one thing, or sharing my thoughts or sharing an idea is one. But I think a large portion of it is also trying to find out who I am. I think I've had a really nice time here in Korzo. I was talking to all the people here, and I was mentioning to Sharon and Leonie and everybody else here that there are some spaces where there's a lot of art, but there's also a lot of ego, and then it's just not the same. But here there's a lot of art, and you can see everybody. There's so many dancers, there are choreographers working somewhere else. There's some children who come to class, and there's some talk happening somewhere, and at the same time everybody's so warm and so loving, and I've really had a lovely time being here. And the audience yesterday was so attentive. When you're performing, you can always feel like what's happening in this space between us, and they were very present, they were very attentive, and I could see everybody watching and assimilating everything that was happening. And I love it when audiences are like that, and it makes me dance better. It makes me be more present. And I had a nice show yesterday. Some days you have good shows and some days you have okay shows. But yesterday I enjoyed myself thoroughly. I really had a nice time.
Om